Hello, it's Dr. DeGrackenreed here, interviewing Isabel, 16-year-old, who is going to be asked questions on how she feels about ageism. So, starting with question number one. If you were a personal manager of a large company, what factors would you consider when deciding how best to use older workers in your company?
I would use the elders for the positions that require a lot of confrontation and where they need to put their foot down a lot because I feel like they're more intimidating and less likely to be like pushed around and abused.
All right. Would you hire an older person to do any type of job? Why or why not? Being careful not to discriminate.
I wouldn't hire just anyone. I would still go through the background checks and to make sure that they have history and to make sure they're more fit for the job.
Okay. Well, in your opinion, should all pilots be required to retire at age 60 or even 65? Why or why not?
I don't think that's really fair because that's someone's passion and something they want to do in life. And I think as long as they're healthy and like legally able to and pass all like the pilot tests, I think that they should be able to continue.
Okay. How does ageism affect the elderly in society as a whole?
I just feel like it creates a lot of misunderstanding just because I feel like each generation grew up a certain way and so they just always feel like things should be the same, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just hard for them to adapt and see things in a new way like we are.
Okay. Well, how can people, young, old, or just society as a whole, what can we do to reduce ageism?
I think it's kind of, I don't want to say impossible, but I don't think we're able to get rid of it 100% just because that's always just going to keep happening. Like, you're going to grow up one way, and then as you get older, it's a different way that you're just not going to agree with.
Mm-hmm.
Or some people do disagree, but I feel like the majority just end up disagreeing just because they don't see it that way, since because of the way that they were raised.
Okay. Um, when you were elderly, what criteria would you go by to establish whether you've successfully aged?
I guess just being able to adapt to change and not let it control me so much. Even if I disagree, I still think it's important to just flow with it and yeah, just flow with it.
Okay. How can you increase your chances of successfully aging for yourself, and what are some major challenges to successfully aging?
A challenge is definitely like finding your peace with it because I feel like when people are like reach their limit, they just blow up and like. So I think it's important.
Their limit, as in,
like they see so many things that they disagree with, and they just had like they're just over with, and they just get mad at the world. So I feel like it's important to like find that peace within yourself where you don't feel so angry.
okay. And what would you say that you can do to increase your chances of successfully aging?
I think definitely being out more into the world, being more involved in the new things, so you can get your own experience instead of just looking at it from the outside and just be like, oh, like that's so wrong or that just is weird. Like you should really go see and see what, like look in deeper and see what it's really about.
All right. Well, thank you very much in participating in our interview today. Really appreciate it, Isabel.
Thank you.
All right. So, in your personal experiences, have you ever witnessed ageism?
An example is older kids. I see they are less respectful of younger kids just primarily because they're younger than them. You automatically think they're less experienced than you, they're less wise than you, and you can just like they shouldn't be taken seriously.
Here we are back at it with our woman here, Ashley. She is 21 years old, and she's here to be interviewed on ageism. All right. So, if you were the personal manager of a large company, what factors would you consider when deciding how best to use the older workers in your company?
I would have them in like the front of the store or as like management because they usually like they've gone through stuff and they have more experience than other people. So they would know more about the history of the US and like how to like make it better. And the front of the store because based on my experience with old people that they love to talk and like they talk to like everybody. Because like my grandpa like loves to talk to people. He'll anywhere he goes he talks to someone. So I feel like that would be really good to have them there and like get them to buy more stuff.
All right. Would you hire an older person to do any type job? Why or why not? Being careful not to discriminate.
I would not have them pick up heavy, like 70 pounds, or like they would have to show me. They would have to like meet the requirements. They would have to like show if they can pick up this amount of weight because like you don't want someone doing a job that they can't even do. Not to like even if they were young, you wouldn't want someone to do that because like that's just they're not qualified for the job. So they would have to meet all the requirements for the job.
Okay. In your opinion, should all pilots be required to retire at the age of 60 or even 65? Why or why not?
I mean, if they meet the requirements, then they shouldn't be able to retire. Like some people want to retire, so like they should be able to, but some love to work, so it's like they should have the decision to work or not. So yeah, they just have to meet the requirements to do the job.
Okay. How does ageism affect the elderly and society as a whole?
A lot of people look at them like there's two sides. Some of them think they're really lovely and sweet, and then some of them are like, get off my lawn. So it's like, there's two different sides with ageism. So it's like, really depends like who you are and like society. It's like if you be viewed good or bad, just depends like how you look at it. But
it's discrimination against the elderly based on their age. So do you think it's a problem in society, or
I mean,
it just you don't see it as an issue?
we have issues that like will never be fixed, and I feel like these are one of them. Like
Okay.
We like judge.
Well, we'll get to that question. We'll get to that question next, actually. What can people, young, old, society as a whole, do to reduce ageism?
I feel like realize that there is ageism and that like this is a thing, and like cause like realizing it, then like you could try to like solve it, but like old people cannot like usually pick up heavy things, which is like a true fact because like their bones are weak, they just can't do it. But like you shouldn't think they're always mean or like always nice because everyone's their own person. Like they could be an old white man or like get off my lawn type of man, but that's just who they are as a person, and not every old person's like that. So you shouldn't think that of all people because everyone's their own person. So you shouldn't really judge it by their age.
When you are elderly, what criteria would you go by to establish whether you have successfully aged?
You have a good career that makes a lot of money that can provide for your family with your wants and needs. And like you have a good car, you have food in the house always, like just like the basic things that you need in life, and plus some of your wants. And like you're retired, and yeah, you just have enough to provide for your family and like maybe help society. Yeah, you should help society when you're old. Like you can give some money away. Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah.
Okay. How can you increase your chances of successfully aging for yourself, and what are some major challenges to successfully aging?
I feel like these days to be like really successful and like get a good career and make good money, you have to go to college. So that's one thing that you can do to increase your chances in being successful when you're older. And being motivated, like you can't go to college and not be motivated. Like you have to be motivated to want to do things and like be successful. Like and the challenges you can go through is like you could you can, like, your car can break down, you'd have to pay that. Your rent's due, you don't have the money, you can get evicted. Your grades are slipping because of all that stuff going. You're on probation with school. There's a lot of things that can help, like, that can challenge you in becoming successful. Like, there's so many things in this world that could affect the success, but you just have to be motivated.
And personally, have you experienced ageism or seen it in your lifetime?
Yes. This is like for one person. There was this old man, and he was driving, and you know how people are like, "Oh, people shouldn't drive." This was like a true thing. Like, but this was one person. You can't say that for everyone because my grandpa could still drive, but they should take a test. I'm pretty sure they do. But they should probably do it more often for older people because their eyesight changes and, like, they need to, like, they just need to... Yeah, that's one view. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. And here today we have our fellow here, Christian, who is 26 years old, and he's going to be answering questions about ageism. All right. Let's get started here. If you were a personal manager of a large company, what factors would you consider when deciding how best to use the older workers in your company?
I would probably use the factors determining their capability, whether they're capable physically, because some people can be old and still be physically fit. It just depends how they age. Or if they're just better at, being at the front of the store. It depends on their individual capabilities.
Okay. Would you hire an older person to do an any type job? Why or why not, being careful not to discriminate?
I think this just kind of ties back into the last question where it just depends on the individual capabilities, because one old person could be able to do one job that another young person couldn't do, or vice versa. So individually, you just have to look at them and decide what they would be best positioned at for you and for them.
Okay. In your opinion, should all pilots be required to retire at the age 60 or even 65? Why or why not?
Not really, because, again, some people age differently. One person 60 or 65 could really feel like, it could really seem like they're completely done, like they're already, having medical bills, they're already sick, they have glaucoma and their eyes are screwed up. But there's other people who are 60 years old and they look like they're 50 or 40, and they're probably still very capable of driving for another 10, 20 years, or piloting.
Okay. How does ageism affect the elderly and society as a whole?
I feel like there is some degree of discrimination that is effective. A lot of people think old people are incapable, they need to be coddled, but in reality, some old people are like that, but there are old people who are still very capable of going about daily life, and probably are still even more capable than younger people.
Okay. What can people, young, old, or just society as a whole do to reduce ageism?
Just understand that everyone's different. Like, everyone's independent genes can determine how well you age or how badly you age. Some people bald when they're 30, so it just depends. Just understand that everyone has their individual capabilities and limitations, and I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. When you are elderly, what criteria would you go by to establish whether you have successfully aged?
Stress, the amount of stress I have, if I can live stress-free, if I can be successful having money, being able to provide. Those are all good things to be able to do when you're old, because when I'm old, I don't want to have to work, because I'm going to be I'm going to be worked already. I want to work when I'm healthy and, young, when I can take all that damage and all that stress. When I'm old, I want to be relaxing on a yacht on the sea somewhere. So.
All right. How can you increase your chances of successfully aging for yourself, and what are some major challenges to successfully aging?
I feel like some major challenges would be taking into account that once you reach a certain age, it's not the same. People are conditioned when they're young to just do whatever they want. Young people can eat and drink and do whatever, and they won't get fat or gain weight. It doesn't affect their body physically. But now I'm 26, I can start seeing that effect on my age. It's not detrimental, but you do start to feel the effect of age on your body, and it does change things. You do need to fix your diet. You need to fix your health-wise. What you do on a daily basis can really affect how you progress in your life.
All right, well, thank you for that. Personally, in your lifetime, have you experienced ageism?
Definitely, but good
Or
example.
seen it?
A good example would be like I seen an old man at a grocery store, kind of like stumble with his cart. He spilled some groceries, and you know, a lot of this old man, he looked completely okay. He was by himself. He didn't look like to be struggling or anything. But a lot of young people came to rush to his aid, which is good and everything. But it's like, I think it was kind of over exaggerated. That old man didn't really need help. He was just kind of like, oh, well, okay.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us here today and partaking in this interview on ageism. Appreciate it a lot. All right. So during my experiment, hello, it's Dr. DeGraffenreid here to talk about my interview's responses on ageism. All right. So during my interviews, I've noticed that the women more so thought that the elderly people should have a specific job based on their knowledge and wisdom and experiences. They feel as though since they're older, they have more authority just because of their age, and that people are more likely to view them as somebody to listen to. For the male in my experiment who was older than both the women, he felt as though it depends on the individual for older people's job positions. So he felt as though just because the person's older, they may still be able to complete tasks that young people would be able to. It just basically depends on what they can do themselves. Another difference that I've noticed across the ages of the group is that the women who were younger, they felt as though older people doing physical labor should definitely be monitored and more so maybe not even happen. They felt as though since they are older, their muscles and bones have more wear and tear, so they are physically and biologically not able to complete tasks such as moving heavy boxes in a certain amount of time or not. Another difference that I noticed in that experiment is that the male felt as though the older, just because the person's old, they can actually potentially even do the job better than the younger person. It just all depends on their qualifications. You could know a 75-year-old who's extremely active, works out every day, and can even possibly lift more than a 16-year-old boy who, you know, maybe is just in basketball camp. Based on their responses, that's how the male and the women felt on elderly people getting jobs on doing physical labor. Some similarities that they all shared was they all felt as though a pilot of ages 60 or 65 should be able to keep their job and not retire. For different reasons, of course, but one that I found very interesting was that a pilot could have a lot of interest towards what they do, a lot of passion, and just because they're older doesn't mean that they should necessarily lose their job. Maybe that's what they live for, and just because they're old doesn't mean they lost their sense of seeing. They may be just as fluent as they were when they were 25, if not even better, because of their experience. Just because they're older doesn't mean that their age should necessarily affect that, and that's what they all came to an agreement about. A person that I interviewed, Ashley, she felt as though you could do something about ageism by creating more awareness, by maybe not reducing prejudice perceptions, by getting the word out there that just because somebody's old doesn't mean they're less capable of doing tasks. Christian and Isabel felt as though you can't really do something about ageism, that it's just going to continuously happen based on every people's perspectives and how they feel about things from how they were raised in their generations, and that you can't really fix ageism because people are always going to have their point of views, because that's the time period that they were born, and those are the topics and experiences that they were raised on, and that's how they think, and sometimes you can't really change that based on their perspectives. One thing that I also found very fascinating is that they all seem to agree that aging successfully meant that you were well off financially. So maybe this meant that you had your dream car, or maybe just even a car, or even your home, being able to provide for yourself, but also being able to take care of your unnecessary wants that you don't necessarily need to survive. So maybe that means getting your hair done a crazy color that you like, or buying an expensive phone that you've always dreamed of having. All those things, according to the people I interviewed, they felt as though being successful as you age meant that you were well off with your finances. A trend that I tend to notice from my 3 interviewees was that the women who were close in age tend to agree on topics more, and the guy who I interviewed tend to not necessarily think the same as the ladies. Christian was a Cuban male who was 26 years old. He felt as though everybody should be given an equal chance, so maybe based on his values that he was grown and raised on, that persuaded his thinking. Isabel was Romanian and Ashley was white American, but both felt as though the elderly should have certain limitations. So maybe based on their culture and their perspectives, they may not view the elderly as necessarily more useful than the younger people, or to have equal value. They definitely feel like there's some things that the elderly should not be able to do versus the younger generations. One thing that I did find interesting was that out of all the people that I interviewed, no one mentioned their health as a challenge to success, which I feel like is success when you're elderly, which I feel is very important, because you can as you age, you do gain more health problems, such as decreased muscle tissue in your heart, more fat deposits around the body. So you're more likely to get diseases and just general complications with your life because of your aging process. So that's definitely something that you would want to watch out for and hope the best for as you age. One thing that I did notice was Isabel's views were more so based on nature perspectives, and Isabel's views were more so based on the nurture perspective. She felt as though everybody's environment played a huge role on their thinkings, especially when it came to ageism. So basically, how you were raised and how you view the world around you determines how you were going to treat older people, or how you're going to view them, and how you feel like they should play a role in our society. She talked about how the people's certain experiences could create conflict based on what they have witnessed, so that could definitely cause issues, because two people being born in completely different areas, they're definitely going to have different perspectives on lives. Ashley felt as though you need certain qualifications to get places. So necessarily for the elderly people, maybe they could have maybe a physical labor job, or maybe something that requires things to get done in a certain time period. It just depends on if that person is capable of doing that. So maybe she also felt as though ageism and the elderly's getting job definitely showed a nature perspective. I mean, a nurture perspective. And last but least, we're going to be talking about Christian. His perspective as well, just like the other two girls, showed nurture, because he felt as though a person's experiences, qualifications, and all that should determine how elderly people should be viewed and what jobs they should get in society as well. And thank you for watching this interview. I will definitely be hoping to record more. And Dr. DeGraffenreid says have a good one.